traumatic events in your life. The first portion of the meeting, she asked you, what's the most traumatic things that ever happened to you in your life? Like what really made you feel really bad and hopeless? And I didn't. And part of my thinking, I just started questioning and asking God, like, why am I going through this? I'm going through the same process that I've been through, fighting, getting angry at Natalie, fighting. She forgives me. She was known as the crazy lady in the neighborhood at the time, but she was speaking and she knew who I was and knew who my dad was, but she looked at me and said, hey, your father, he's ugly. And she started calling him names. And I'm like, no, he's not. I said, you're ugly. I was trying to defend my dad. And I just ignored her and I just walked home. And I pretty much forgot about the situation. And I went home that night. And as I was eating dinner, my father was the local preacher in the church. Everybody knew him.
Hey guys, if it's crazy. All right, go now. Wait.
Get in there! Oh my God!
Hey guys, welcome to the Family Mess. I'm Noah, and have a nice day.
Good God!
I love the Family Mess. Oh.
Welcome to the Family Mess podcast. I'm your host, Ian. The Family Mess, the podcast about life with kids and all things adulting. Let's talk. Welcome, everybody. My name's Ian. It's good to be back. Natalie and I have taken about a 3 to 4 month hiatus off recording podcasts for the Family Mess podcast. A lot of this was due to me, us fighting and things just not going well. So during that time, I realized I needed to do something different with my mind, myself, because my actions were very negative towards her and myself, and I didn't know what to do. But during the process of the change, I realized I had to do something different, but I didn't know what it was. I realized I was changing and I was questioning a lot of things in my life. I can look back now and realize that I believe God was trying to tell me something, but at that time I didn't know what it was. But now that I've gone through this change, I want people to listen to my experience that I went through over the last 6 to 8 months. Really, the drastic change took place, I would say, towards the end of December, right after Christmas, the beginning of January timeframe. But I will take you guys back to what triggered this event, because I want to really explain what happened to me. And I want everybody to understand that when you see me and when you talk to me, if I act a little different and I sound slightly different, it's because I'm becoming somebody different. I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing, but I'm trying to deal with this change that has taken place in my soul and who I am. I guess the best way to start this is to go back years from I was a boy, but I'll just go back to high school. And even in high school, I always questioned the world, my existence, who I was. And because I grew up in a very religious family, I never had an opportunity to question much. I just had to accept what I was told. And part of that acceptance was always believing that Jesus was there for us, he died for us, and never to question anything about the Bible ever. Just believe everything as is and move on with life. And that's what I did. Up into my 20s, going into my 30s, church was a part of my life, going to church, prayer, Bible. But everything that I was supposed to do, I did, but I realized I wasn't getting any happier. I felt I was actually getting further away from God. I don't know how to explain it, but the more I went to church, the more frustrated I became. let's fast forward to the last several months of my life. Nellie and I were fighting over years, mostly because of me just being very sad and angry at mostly myself, and always believing that I could never be good enough for myself, and always believing Nellie should have left me for somebody else because she deserves somebody else. I always felt that way. I don't know why, but I did. And it was the event that led to probably our biggest fight I think I've ever had in a while. But things were going so good, and we just came back from Vegas, and we decided to go to the Space Center. But I believe we were going somewhere before, and Nellie made a suggestion to change at the last second to go to Space Center, and I completely lost it and said I didn't want to go. She's always changing her mind. And I remember she was just so angry because I lost it again, and I yelled, and at the end of the whole day, she came to me and said she didn't love me anymore, and it was probably a time for us to split up. I agreed, and I made up in my mind to take the steps to move forward with the divorce process. In my mind, I probably wanted this for a long time, and so when she actually said it, I was like, okay, let's go do it. And so for the next couple of days, I was looking for divorce lawyers and really trying to figure out how I was going to live a life without her and possibly without the kids. And it was difficult, but I accepted it, and I just went to move on with my life. But during the process, I began to question a lot of things about God, myself, and who I was and who I really wanted to be. And I was very confused about who I was. And part of my thinking, I just started questioning and asking God, like, why am I going through this? I'm going through the same process that I've been through, fighting, getting angry at Natalie, fighting, she forgives me, I get mad, we fight again over the same damn thing we've always fought about. And it's usually me being frustrated about something stupid. I can't even think about it now, but I remember being frustrated a lot and not understanding why I was getting frustrated, just realizing that I had no control over anything that was going on. And because I had no control, I didn't know what I was doing. So I began to question church. I really started thinking about the universe, who God really was as this omnipotent being who cared about all creation. And I really started questioning everything the church had taught me. I didn't stop believing, but I was just asking a lot of why questions. Who's God? Why are we here? Why am I worshiping somebody I can't see? Why is he mad at us if we don't listen to him? Why does he want us to worship him? All these questions I was asking, and I just couldn't figure out any answers. And I think I was getting ready for a sermon, and there's a guy on YouTube that mentioned that I think Jesus was missing in the Bible for, I think it was 18 years. I think it's known as the missing years of Jesus. And I never believed Jesus was missing for 18 plus years until I looked in the Bible and realized, yes, he was missing for about 18 years, and he shows back up as an adult with power, and he seemed very enlightened and open, and people started to follow him. And it's always bothered me a little bit that where was Jesus for 18 years, and who did he learn? Where did he learn? Where did he get his powers from? All these things crossed my mind, but I never stopped believing. But it did cause me to become a little suspicious of why the Bible doesn't really talk about those missing years, and he's gone and then he just shows back up. It just bothered me. I went down some rabbit holes, but what happened was I realized that I'd never questioned the Bible ever, never questioned God ever. And I just one day decided to write down all my questions on paper and just why. And as I was reading these questions back, I couldn't come up with the answers, and I couldn't find answers. And I realized I've been living my whole life on automation mode and just believing everything I was told. I never had a chance to believe anything. I was just told to do something, and I was born into a world where I never had a choice. I just believed because I was told to believe. I never believed because I found the answers myself. I always believed what I was told. And it was at this point when I realized that something isn't right, and I'm living a life, but this is not who I am. And it was at this realization that I began to come to the conclusion that God has designed me for something great. I don't know what it is, but I've always felt like I've always been designed or created to do something special for people, for Him. I don't know what it is, but it's not living this life and struggling and being angry at my wife, hating myself. There's something's missing. And it wasn't until I began to meditate. I've never meditated before, and Natalie's told me about this a couple times, and I did it, but I was always lazy because I didn't really take it seriously. But this event, this anger and sadness and depression inside, my soul's destroying me from the inside, and I didn't know what it was. I tried to pray it away. I tried to get prayer for it, but I was always depressed and sad. There's just something on the inside that just wouldn't leave me. And I'll later explain what it was when I get to that part of the story. But I began to meditate and I didn't know how to do it, so I just began to read on how to do it. And I began to practice before I went to bed at night. I began to say affirmations of love to myself as the first step. So the only thing I could say as the first affirmation was, I'm loved. And I repeated this phrase thousands of times a day. I'm loved. I'm loved. I'm loved. And I said nothing else. And I did this for several weeks until I started believing it. And then I added another affirmation, and I said, God loves me. I'm loved. God loves me. I did this for a couple more weeks. Then I added another one. God loves me. I'm loved. I'm special. I'm forgiven. And I realized as I said these affirmations over and over again that I started to feel different. I didn't know why, but I started to believe that God did love me and I was loved. I didn't know how I was loved, but I felt I was truly loved. And it's the first time in my life where I felt I was loved. God actually loved me. There was no judgment in how I lived and who I was. I was just loved. And it was this initial change that made me realize there's something else out there that I haven't found yet. I don't know what it is, but something is knocking on my soul to go out and search for it. I didn't know what it was. Natalie told me about a friend that went to a retreat in Arizona, and it changed her life. When I was telling her what I was doing, I did tell her I did not want to get divorced because I just didn't want to give up on her. And it wasn't really the boys, but at the end of the day, I did not want the boys to grow up without a father. But most of all, I just didn't want Natalie to grow up and just be sad because I just could see her pain. And I decided, you know what? I just can't give up on this marriage just yet. I have to keep pursuing it. I have to try something. Prayer's not working. Nothing is working. I have to try something. I don't know what to do. So I spoke to Natalie's friend and called her on the phone, and I asked her about her experience she had in Sedona in this retreat she went to. And I said, well, what did you do? What did you experience? How was it? I asked all these questions, and we were on the phone for a bit, and she explained how it helped her what she experienced, what she went through. And she told me how it changed her life forever. And she wasn't the same person after going to this retreat. She was healed. And hearing this, I was very curious about this process. So this process of healing trauma and pain, I was very curious about, because I've tried everything. I've tried going to pastors, getting prayer. I've tried going to counselors, marriage counselors, talking. None of that shit was working. And I said, I have nothing else to do except try this. So I called the place in Sedona. It's called Sedona Soul Adventure. I called them, spoke with a representative. They asked me some interview questions, and a couple of days later, they called me back saying that I was a candidate for this retreat. And after paying the money and signing up for it, it just seemed like I wanted to do this, and I was excited about it. But at the same time, I was scared because I didn't know what to expect. And I've never done anything involving a spiritual reborn, anything that's outside of church. I've always been told that is demonic. That is not of Christ. If it's not of Christ and praying, it's demonic. So anything that's outside the Bible, I've never entertained, because I was taught that it's not, it's not God. If it's spiritual and it's not Jesus, it's something else. It's demonic. But I was so hurt from yelling at Natalie and just being angry and sad that I didn't even care about what anybody said about it being demonic or it's not of God. I just wanted to try something different because I was just so sad and broken. I didn't know what to do. I just very broken on the inside and just feeling really bad about myself. So I signed up for it. I did the interview questions, and towards the end of the year is when I planned the trip, and all these weird events started happening to me. It's almost like something was trying to prevent me from going out there. I had a work conflict after the first time I tried to schedule a trip. And then the next time I tried to schedule it, I had another conflict. And the third time I ended up in the hospital with dehydration. And it just seemed like something was trying to stop me from experiencing this change. And it bothered me because I wanted to change, and something out there was preventing me. I don't know what it was, but I was determined to get out there. So I finally made my way out to Sedona, a little nervous, but I told a couple of friends, and I hope they're listening to the podcast right now. I told a couple of friends that I'm going to do this. I'm a little nervous, but I'm going to do this because I want this change. I want people to listen to what I'm going through, and I'm hoping that they'll somehow use the information I've told them to maybe change or possibly look at changes in their lives. I don't know what it was, but I was willing to do it. So I finally arrive at the location. I have the itinerary. I rent myself. Now they helped me rent a little house, and I took care of everything. And I show up the first day to the site, and I got an introduction, and they gave me this weird stone. And I forgot what the stone was, but it was like an energy stone. And they said, everybody I met said the stone was special. I don't know if this is part of their ploy, but they made me feel like I was wanted. And because they made me feel like I was wanted, I didn't feel threatened. I didn't feel any negative energy when I was there. I just felt at peace. And I just said, I'm just going to be open to whatever experience I have. I'm going to be fully open to it because I need something. I don't know what it is, but I need something. So the next thing I know is I'm speaking with the lady that introduced me to the course, and she was telling me my itinerary, and That was about 10:30 in the morning on the first day, and then I show up to my appointment later on, I think 12:30 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And this was a soul healing portion of my different classes or instructors I was taking. This is called a soul healing. So the purpose of this soul healing is to introduce yourself to most of the traumatic events in your life. The first portion of the meeting, she asked you, what's the most traumatic things that ever happened to you in your life? Like what really made you feel really bad and hopeless? And I didn't want to do this. I told her I'm not very comfortable talking about those parts of my life. And she said, well, I'm going to ask you, and you can stay in the current state you're in, or you can make a choice to go into that side of you again and to confront those feelings and that pain head on. Until you confront them, they'll be in you forever, and you'll never heal. You'll just be carrying around this burden your life, and it's tough to get past. It's one of those things that just never goes away until you actually face it head on. So I said, okay, I'm going to do it. I don't know what to expect. I'm going to do it. But the first thing is, she said, what's the most traumatic events that ever happened to you from the time you're a little boy to when you were, you're an adult male now. And she said, what's the youngest you can remember? And I said, I remember when I was a little boy in Jamaica, and I must have been about 3 or 4 years old. And I was walking home from school, and one of our neighbors was this crazy lady. And she was known as the crazy lady in the neighborhood at the time, but she was speaking, and she knew who I was and knew who my dad was, but she looked at me and said, hey, your father, he's ugly. And she started calling him names, and I'm like, no, he's not. I said, you're ugly. I was trying to defend my dad, and I just ignored her and I just walked home. And I pretty much forgot about the situation. And I went home that night, and as I was eating dinner, my father was the local preacher in the church. Everybody knew him. And I was eating dinner, and I still remember this very, very clearly. I was eating dinner, and he comes up and he goes, hey, the lady came up to me and said you called her stupid. And I immediately said, no, she called you names first, and I was defending you. I was just calling her names back because she was being mean to you. And he said, you're lying. And he proceeded to just take the belt off and just beat me. I remember he beat me and just wouldn't stop. He wouldn't stop beating me. And I cried, and I cried and cried some more. And I kept crying, and I didn't know what to do because I was telling the truth and told him he just beat me so much. I don't think I've ever been beaten. Even when I was older, I wasn't beaten that bad. I just sat there. I just didn't know what to do. After the beating was done, I just kind of sat at the table because he beat me at the table. I was literally at the dinner table when he beat me. I think he beat me in a chair. I never even left the chair. I was just screaming. And I just sat there. I just couldn't finish my dinner because I lost my appetite. And I think he came back. It might have been the next day. I was eating dinner, and I was at the table, and he comes up to me and goes, hey, I talked to the lady, and I found out that she was lying. I'm sorry I beat you, but I think the damage already was done. I didn't know what to do. So I just said, okay, whatever. And And as I was telling the lady this, I was just crying, just bawling my eyes out, because I mean, I can talk about it now, but at that time I couldn't say anything. I didn't know what to do, where to go. I just knew I just need to get away. The lady, my counselor, went ahead and asked me some more traumatic, moments in my life. And I told her, the funny thing was that I told her when Natalie first broke up with me. I said, that was pretty traumatic. I cried like a little punk for days. I think Natalie will tell everybody that. No, I just cried like a little punk. I mean, it broke my heart, but that was traumatic, but I think it was a different type of trauma. And I think the trauma as a kid was just, most of my issues. My dad, didn't beat us a lot, but is very verbal, very a lot of verbal abusive. He just mean. I remember this other time I told a lady that I was trying to do something and I was asking to go somewhere, and he goes, you got to say the word. And I didn't know what word he was talking about. And I started getting nervous and I started to cry, and he made me cry for about a good 20 minutes. And I just didn't know what to do. And I was like, I don't know what the word is. Just tell me the word. He goes, you got to say please. You got to say the word please. And I looked at him like, this guy's crazy. I can't believe he did that to me. So we fast forward, and I'm in this session, and I'm just crying my eyes out, because now I'm just getting into those stories. But what I found out about this first session that was very profound to me is that I realized I was holding on to this pain, but it wasn't the adult Ian that was experiencing this pain. It was this little boy that was living inside of me that was experiencing this pain. This little boy Ian was experiencing this pain, and he was the one that was giving me these anger issues, these outbursts. It's this little boy inside. He just wanted to know that he just wanted to be loved. And the lady kind of mentioned that, but I never ever thought about that there's this other Ian inside. And come to find out, most of us in our adult lives, we go through trauma as kids or very young, and that trauma stays unless we get help. It just stays. And so we actually stay in that state of mind. It's almost like a picture is taken in our souls, and we just stay there. And a lot of us may try to put that in our past, but because it's a permanent picture until we change or choose to confront it. Some of us, those moments come out when we're anxious, sad, mad for no reason. Those feelings come out. Mine happened to be just sad, depression, just these awful feelings that I felt. And a lot of it was, I just never could forgive myself for anything. I couldn't forgive myself. I didn't know how to. I just blamed myself for everything. And because I blamed myself for everything, I could never move on to forgive myself. I just carried this burden my whole entire life, this pain and trauma. I never ever forgave myself. I never forgave my dad. Just continuously blamed him for my pain. And she told me that yes, he did cause my pain, and because he did not know how to be loved himself, he didn't know how to love me, my sister, my mom. He just didn't know how to love any of us. He didn't, because he wasn't loved himself when he was young. He was also beaten a lot. And I realized at that moment that yes, I've been holding on to this pain, but my dad's also been holding on to his pain. And my dad's 83. I don't want to be an 83-year-old and turn into him. He's a very scared individual. He's very angry, but he's more scared and sad. And it took me a very long time to realize that my dad is just a very scared and sad person. That's why he doesn't want to be around people. He prefers to be alone all the time. If it's up to him, he wouldn't be around anybody. I don't want to end up like that. I want to be around people. I want to love people. I want to show people love. Because I feel like I'm special and I'm designed to help people to spread God's love. I don't know, but I just knew I wanted to be like him. So the first session was really a healing soul session. You go through all the trauma, and what I learned from that is, I think I mentioned before, until change doesn't happen until you're ready to confront your pain and your past. It won't change. So you have to be ready to confront who you are, that young version of yourself. You have to really be ready to confront that self and to fully understand that old self, that young self, the one that you're forgetting is the one that needs the most help. It's the one that's looking for help. That young version of yourself is the one that is seeking you and looking for you all the time. And the further we go down in life and keep ignoring that young self, the more unhappy we become sometimes, the more angry we become. And now that we are older, we try to justify our anger. I mean, sometimes blame and project these feelings onto our family members, people at the workplace, and we never begin to look inside first for where a lot of this is. Even though people hurt us, individuals outside, they hurt us, they put us in this trauma, we ultimately determine how we act. We make the choice to be angry, be sad, even though people will tell you that, oh, it's not us, but we make the choice to react, to be angry, to be sad. We choose that, and at times, sometimes we don't even know we're choosing that. Sometimes our brains are wired a little differently. We just don't understand and fully comprehend the entire situation. But after that first day, I realized I was on my way to this path, this glorious path of healing. And as I was experiencing this healing, yes, I was crying, but once I began to forgive this little Ian, and told this Ian that I loved him, and it wasn't my fault, I began to experience love again. I can't explain it, but something began to crack on the inside of me. I don't fully know how to put in the words, but something was happening to me, and I no longer began to hate my dad. And I just didn't want to hate anymore. It was wasted energy, and I didn't want to become a person that hate anybody. I wanted to be somebody that could love people and that could help people and that could be part of people's lives and make a change just to help whoever I could. And I'm going to take the next 2 or 3 podcasts to explain the different experiences that I went through. So this first podcast is about the soul healing portion of my experience. I don't know how to put in the words what's happening to me. I'm still experiencing some of that now, but I'm a month out from the Sedona experience, and I'm much better than I was. I'm not as emotional as I was when I first got back from the initial trip. So that was day 1 of my experience. Podcast number 2 will be the experience that I had at day number 2. And then podcast number 3 will be my last day at Sedona and what I went through. I'm hoping these Rebirth Soul podcasts is what I want to call it. The first 3 podcasts this year will be a help to anybody that's out there. Please, whoever my friends are, even if I don't know you, just reach out to me if you want to talk about this personally, one-on-one. I'll tell you exactly what I went through. And, just talking about this will help. I don't know how, but talking about this, I think, is the best thing I think anybody could do. So that's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks for listening, and looking forward to doing podcast number 2. See you next week. Thanks.
Get in there! Oh my God!
Hey guys, welcome to the Family Mess. I'm Noah. And have a nice day.
Good God!
I love the family mess.